Thank you everyone for attending my session about create a full automated SQL Server Lab with AutomatedLab. Hello Raymond. Just a show of hands, who is familiar with AutomatedLab already? Okay. Who has done everything with SQL Server already? SQL Server always on availability groups? Okay. Who likes the complexity of always on availability groups and building it? Okay, good. So, firstly, many thanks to our sponsors. Without them, this event would not be possible. So, meet them at the booth, like Ben said already. Bit about myself. I'm Konstantin. I'm working as a senior systems engineer at a company in Germany for nearly 9 years now. I'm also an organizer of a German PowerShell user group. So, if you want to speak or if you want to attend, just reach out to me later. And in my day-to-day job, I'm specializing in automation and infrastructure design. So what are we going to talk about today? We dive a bit into what is AutomatedLab. What is the SQL Server always on availability group? We will talk a little bit about the infrastructure. I have an infrastructure picture, what the labs are going to look like. I have so much content that I only decide to show the third lab, so the AutomatedLab lab. If you are interested, we can also show the DSC lab or the imperative approach if you want. If you want to, so quick show of hands, who wants to show the DSC or the imperative, the DSC one? Okay, good. Then we will talk what is DSC. I will use version 1. Not like in my talk, as was mentioned, V2. V2 was not working for me. We can go into depth why this is not there, but we can look at this lab also. Good. So what is AutomatedLab? It can be easy or it can be difficult to set up lab and test environments. You can do it on Hyper-V or on Azure. I just, for Raymond's information, just was asked if we have support for other hypervisors, so like SaltStack and so on. I already told no, but this guy in front can get a PR to support one of these hypervisors. We can get Windows or Linux VMs inside of AutomatedLab to work. Linux support is not so good. Use Windows because Linux is a bit wonky to set up. It can be installed through the PS gallery or through an MSI. So the MSI is available as an artifact on the GitHub, and you can also use install PS resource or install module or AutomatedLab, and it will download all the dependencies for you. The lab, I think the product is good because we have many integrated roles already. So you can create a domain controller, a certificate authority, a SQL Server. You can have a custom role for installing endpoint manager, SCCM, or whatever the tool's naming is now. You can install you can do a failover clustering. You can do TFS. You have DSC support and much, much more. I will go in depth on some of these roles. And we have here a good documentation which can be found at automatedlab.org. So what are the prerequisites for using AutomatedLab? You have to have PowerShell 5.1 or PowerShell 7. My example, I will use PowerShell 5.1 because I have some weird issue with Windows Server 2022. The OS language where AutomatedLab is installed has to be ENUS. If not, you will get some problems because AutomatedLab is dependent on that language. You have to have the ISOs. So if you install AutomatedLab, we see later you get a folder structure where also there's a folder called ISOs. So you should download the ISOs for the servers or for the products that you are using beforehand, that AutomatedLab can reference these ISOs. And you need a CPU with virtualization support and all that jazz. So just a quick and dirty example for a single machine deployment in AutomatedLab. We have here what is called a lab definition. The lab definition is, I will show later, AutomatedLab creates XML files, and inside of this XML files, this lab definition creates this XML files. We give the lab a name. We tell it what is the default virtualization engine. It's Hyper-V. If you want to have Azure, just replace it with Azure, and it will target Azure. If you want to add a machine to the lab, you have the add lab machine definition. You give the machine a name, you assign it some memory, and you tell it which operating system to install. How do I get the list of the operating systems? There is a commandlet which is called get lab available operating system. It will scan every ISOs that are in the ISO folder and checks if there are operating systems inside, and will give you the name. You just copy the name and paste it into the operating system parameter. There are many, many more parameters, but this is the easiest one. And the most important one is install lab. This will create the XML files, consume the XML files, and install the lab. So it will create the base base VHDs, create the machines, image the machines, and install any roles if defined. In our case, we just want a empty Windows 11 Enterprise. Any questions to this? Okay, good. So a brief introduction to, but I think I don't have to talk about this. What is an always-on availability group? Just for the recording. It's a disaster recovery solution for SQL Server databases. So you have a service that's living mainly in a failover cluster, and then you can add databases to the server, and they will fail over as a unit to the new node if other node goes down to a primary or secondary replica. What are the building blocks? So what did I do in my lab? We need SQL Server Enterprise Edition, at least 2 nodes. I only created 2 nodes. We need to create a Windows failover cluster. I used Storage Spaces Direct because I don't have a SAN near with me, so I created a Storage Space Direct pool. Created a scale-out file server for creating the shares where we store our databases and the needed files. And last but not least, the availability group listener for connecting to the always-on availability group. So I brought a picture that we have the visual overview what we are creating. We have the contoso.com domain controller. We have here a failover cluster with 2 nodes. The primary replica and the secondary replica, they have direct attached storage. In my example, they have 3 disks, but in the lab, they have only 2 disks. These are, then they will use Storage Spaces Direct to have a pool. Then out of this pool, we create volumes. On these volumes, we create shares with the scale-out file server. And on the scale-out file server or on the shares that the scale-out file server produces, we store our databases, our log files, our backups, and so on. Any questions to this infrastructure? Everything good? Okay. Good. What is DSC? So I tell DSC out of the V1 standard, so not the V2 or the new one, V3. It's a desired state configuration. It's a platform for configuring your infrastructure with configuration as code. So you have everything laid out as code. My code is somewhat 800 lines long for configuring a failover cluster and so on. It ensures that your system remains in the desired state over time. So in my approach, it is not doing this because I'm not using the pull mode. I only use the push mode. So just push the configuration. It will do this one time and it will not check if there is any drift or so. For that, I in V1, I need a pull server. In my example, I'm not doing this, but you should do this in production. And it's a declarative approach, so you don't have to care about how to reach the state. You just need to describe the desired state. So, and the heavy lifting does or do the resources that we consume inside of DSC. So just a simple hello world for anyone who does not know DSC. It looks like a function design. So, but we have the configuration keyword. So in my example, I do call my configuration hello world. Then I have to say, okay, it's runs on this node. For example, in my example, it's localhost. Then we use the file resource. We give the file resource a name called hello world. And we have a destination path is ensure present, and the contents is hello world from DSC. So the destination path, the file has to be in ctemp hello world.txt. It has to be present, so it has to be there. If it's not there, it will be created. And the contents should be hello world from DSC. So if the destination path is not there or the content is not right, it will bring it to the desired state that is described here. Yeah, question.
It will also create a directory if it doesn't exist?
Right. Yes, also. Another question? Okay. You can also use the file resource to create directories if you want. So, good. Then, demo, I think. Let's look in my lab. So I'm using a Azure VM with nested virtualization enabled because my laptop is not so strong. So what I did to set up AutomatedLab, I installed Pasta before because AutomatedLab is using Pasta at the end to do some testing if the lab is configured correctly. I also installed AutomatedLab. And Raymond, don't look. I opt out of the telemetry. So AutomatedLab has some telemetry enabled. So, for example, from which country are you deploying the lab, or what roles are you using, and so on. And you can opt out of this with either set environment variable or calling DENV stuff. So the next thing is AutomatedLab is very unstrict about remoting. So it's forget everything about security. So because AutomatedLab is very unstrict about when it's going to security. So you enable lab host remoting, it will reset the whole security stack on your remoting. So I would prefer if you use a machine where you can do this, which is not in the domain or so. So then, because I downloaded it from the gallery, we have a new lab sources folder, commandlet, which will create the folder structure that we need for creating copying the ISOs and so on. If we do not give it a drive letter, the commandlet will decide will enumerate the drive and will check which is the fastest drive and decide on this where the lab sources folder is created. But in my case, I will give it a drive letter. You don't have to do this, but I wanted to do this. AutomatedLab uses in the background Fred Weinmann's PS framework module. So I uses set PS of config to modify some config values. So for example, I wanted to have everything that has to do with AutomatedLab on my E drive. So because in the for example, lab app data root is under C program data, AutomatedLab, and so on. I want to have it on my E drive that I first can show you the stuff, and second one, I don't have to mess with my C drive because I have a small disk. This can get very heavy. And also, I told my VM path is also on the E drive, not on the C drive. That's the same problem. So that's the configure part. So let's check out the AutomatedLab lab first. And if we have time, we can take a look at the DSC lab. If you don't have time, just catch me and I will show you. That's no problem. So I gave my lab a name. Here I have some secret stuff that's not important. Then what we saw earlier, I created a new lab definition. My default virtualization engine is Hyper-V. Here we have the first thing, because I installed SQL Server 2022, I have to tell AutomatedLab which ISO to use to install SQL Server 2022. So I call add lab ISO definition. I will give it the name. I will give it the path where this is living. And the lab sources directory is a variable that we get for free from AutomatedLab. It will target the lab sources folder. So the lab sources folder is what we created earlier with the commandlet where I targeted drive letter. It's living. No, it's not. It's not my drive on my PC. Let me check. This one it is. So let me get here. Here, this is the lab sources folder. And here we have the iSource folder where my iSource are laying here. And the lab sources variable is pointing in my example to e:\lab sources. So here we have some PS default parameter values. Who knows what PS default parameter values is doing? Okay, just for the recording, PS default parameter values is a cool solution. If you give it a hash table where the commandlet is there and the colon and the parameter and the argument for this parameter, if you do not specify the parameter, it will take this as a standard value. So I will tell that my network is always this net switch lab 3. Here is my tools path. So the tools path is also a cool thing. You have here this lab sources tools. Everything that is inside of this folder, if you create a new machine, will be automatically copied to your virtual machine. So you have, on every machine, you have sysinternals, you have Git and so on, and you can copy your own tools to this. It's going to be always a Windows Server 2022 data center desktop experience. So a full-blown Windows server. Every machine should get 2 gigabytes of memory, and every machine should be domain joined to the contoso.com domain if it's reachable. Here I have a collection of my volumes that should be created earlier with the custom roles that I will show later. Just here, we'll add this in, and here I have also a share list. Here you see we have C cluster storage, SQL data lab SQL 2 and lab SQL 1 and so on, so that we lay out our shares. And yeah, here we are using a lab virtual network definition. So we tell AutomatedLab that it should use the NetSwitch Lab 3. It is an internal switch, and the adapter name on our OS is vEthernet NetSwitch Lab 3, and we should use the address space 192.168.3.0/24. So if we don't do this, then AutomatedLab will decide for us what address space should be used. I create my domain controller. So I first create what is called a lab network adapter definition. So I tell it which switch should be used. The IP address of the network card, I use the 3.10. The gateway should be the 3.1, and the DNS servers should be the 3.10 and also the Azure DNS server. And then I have a network adapter. After this, I create my lab machine. The lab machine should be named Lab 3DC. Here I override it because I use not the full experience. I use the server core experience because I only give it one processor and 2 gigabytes of RAM. That's not a good idea if you want to use the full experience. And here comes the roles concept into play. So we want to create a root DC. So it will automatically install the domain controller role for you. You don't have to do anything. We will assign the net adapter that we created above. We will give it 2 gigabytes of memory. And here we have the add lab machine definition. Here I created the configuration for the failover stuff. So I called get lab machine role definition. So if I want to change the parameters of a role, so the root DC, I don't want to change anything. But if I want to change something inside of the configuration of, for example, the failover node has to be configured. So I have to provide a cluster name and a cluster IP address. And that's the code for changing a role. And I also configure the SQL Server 2022 role. So I told retrieve me the lab definition, and I want to have the SQL engine enabled. I want to have a service account in the password and the agent account in the password. What's the state? What's the startup type of the agent? What's the startup type of the browser? And what's the instance name? And after this, I will create a roles array and add the 2 roles to this array. Here I have the post-installation activities. So, oh my God, what is this? AutomatedLab has this concept of roles, but roles are very hard to write, as Raymond told me. I've never tried it, but Raymond said it's a bit harder than writing custom roles. So custom roles is a cool concept. So you have, I don't know what it is. If I go to lab sources and go to custom roles, here is the folder where I have to put my custom roles inside of this. So there are already some pre-baked custom roles. So for example, if you want to have a CM 2103, so that's the configuration manager or so. And I create, for example, change SQL Server settings, a folder. And the file of this has to have the name host start for running on my VM where AutomatedLab is running. So it will not be copied to the VM. It will only run on the machine where AutomatedLab is there. So it has to have the name host start. And with this get lab post installation activity, I will get my role as shown above in the failover cluster. And here, for example, I install the Cloud Witness. I prepare my disks for Storage Spaces Direct. I enable Storage Spaces Direct. I install the volumes. I install the scale-out file server. Here is the name of the scale-out file server and the cluster name. I prepared my shares, or I install my shares with this. I install PS Resource Get. I install DBA tools, NTFS security. I have to have some permission changes. I install a cumulative update. What's next? I will change some SQL Server settings because it is needed if SQL Server is installed beforehand, and we need to change the folders where the databases and so need to take place. We have to give the service account permissions to the folder, and we have to do this. Or we are doing it with change SQL Server settings and assigning the permissions. I use a sample database, so we restore this inside of one SQL Server. I create a backup on the, or I create a backup and restore it on the another node that I don't have to. That's the always on availability group. Do need to do the heavy lifting because if it's a real big database, it could take a bit of time. I create the always on availability group and everything is done. So this is 216 lines. With this 216 lines, we install the whole cluster. Let's look at the log file that it will spit out, that we can take a look how this is displayed in the console. Just give me some time. So here you see a installation process if you call install lab at the end. So it will tell you what is the lab name. It will, tell you where the lab definitions or where the lab sources are, what ISO files it needs to add. It also told you that it added the SQL Server 22 Enterprise Edition. Here it says, okay, I have a Hyper-V machine already available. I think I don't show you the whole lab. Showed you the whole lab? No, I don't show you the whole lab. Oh, yeah, that's why. So I have a post-installation activity array where everything is added. And here I create the failover, the first failover node. So I have a lab machine definition where, in my example, I create the lab 3 SQL 1, 2 processors, the net adapter that we provided above. It's just 3.11. The rest is the same as the domain controller. Here is if you want to have disks available at your machine or just create some disks, you call add lab disk definition, give it a size and give it a name. And here you provide the disk names and it will automatically attach during the creation process. Here we have our roles array from earlier. So this is a failover node and SQL Server should be installed on it. So we tell it with this. And we also giving it the post installation activities that I showed you earlier. And the same for the second failover cluster node, except that we are not using the post installation activities. And here we have install lab. With this, the whole lab will be installed. Show lab deployment summary will give you an overview of what you have deployed. So what's the password, which machines have you added to the lab, what's the name, what's the IP address range, and so on. So, and just to show you the log file. Thank you very much. And just to show you the log files, a quick overview because we only have 2 minutes. Here it creates the machines. Here you see, because I said this machine should be a domain controller, it automatically installs the domain controller. It waits for the machine to start up. It waits till the domain controllers are here. And here you see it installs the failover cluster. It installs the Windows features. Yada, yada, yada. Preparing the cluster. Everything is doing here. It will add the node. Here we have the install SQL servers. So it will download all the prerequisites that you need for you, and installed at the end it will install SQL Server. There it is, creating user, waiting for SQL Server here. All SQL servers have now, then it will install SQL Server Management Studio, and then it's finished. But if you have the pre-post installation task, it also will be happening inside of the install lab. So that's, I think, definitely a cool thing to take a look at a custom role, because here we see all the custom roles set up. It's very big. Let's look at the last line. Here you see, because AutomatedLab is aware that we have a root DC, a SQL Server, and a failover cluster in it, it will also take some basic tests, so to check if the services are running and everything is functioning correctly. And I have, where is the time? Tests completed? No, I have installed the lab in 1 hour and 36 minutes. So this is definitely a record for me. I have not set up an availability group as fast as this. And it also got tested that everything is working correctly. And I also, here is the output for the summary detailed. So you see here, here 1 hour and 37 minutes the lab took. We have here the address space. We have here our password. So here is it. We have here our virtual machine summary. So what machines are in the lab, what IP addresses do they have, in which domain they are joined, which roles they are having. and how to interact with the machines. So you can invoke lab command, for example. So like invoke command, but for lab machines, you can restart, start, stop the VMs and so on. And to prove that it's working, here is my lab 3 SQL 1, and we have here, that's my availability group listener, and the availability group is set up. And we have also, oh my God, we have also the database AdventureWorks LT 2022 inside of the database, inside of the availability group as a database. So, I think I'm a bit over time, over the 30 minutes, or I'm in time. Do you have any questions, or should I continue? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to know how you manage the Active Directory objects like DNS, permission over organization unit, permission to create these objects, this kind.
So the question was about Active Directory. Okay. So I told SQL Server to create an account. So if the account which I used in the SQL Server role is not there, the AutomatedLab will create it for you. So in this case, let's look at the domain controller. Yeah.
You didn't use a domain admin account, right? You use a service account with no permission over that.
SQL Server uses a service account. Yeah, the service account does not have administrator permissions. Yeah. Another question? Yes.
So I'm not familiar with the lab.
Yeah.
Forgive me if it's a simple question. Already labs that you can use, like lab files that you want?
That's a very good question. So if we look at the documentation for AutomatedLab, or so the lab sources folder will be created for you if you download it through the MSI, or if you say new lab sources folder. Then we have here some sample scripts, and here you have, for example, let's go to the Hyper-V one, and let's say we want that's a very big lab. What do we want to check? PKI custom, for example. So if I go here, I have or Raymond and the team did some work and created working labs that you can try out and get inspiration from. Maybe I should zoom in a bit. Here they improved my work a bit, but I'm not. So in this example, for example, they are using another domain admin for installing the domain, or they will set a lab installation credential for the local admin and so on. So you can customize this also. I went with the defaults.
My use case is I'm an MCT. I want to give my students an easy lab to build.
Uh-huh.
Really quick. At the moment, I'm using DSC.
Uh-huh.
Can get a bit tricky at times, and especially for the students to do it themselves.
Uh-huh.
Perhaps this is something they can do on their own. Guide them says, download this, do those, I don't know how many steps. Have a simple lab to train for AZ800, for example.
Okay. Uh-huh. So the comment was that he has some students. I don't know what it is. I will go away. That he has some students where they are training for a certification to have some sample VMs or some lab where they can train in. That's, I think, exactly the use case that Raymond, I think, built it for. Or for example, you have a customer coming to you and say, okay, I have problem XYZ. So you say, okay, I create a lab for me and try to reproduce the problem. Then I throw the lab away or give it to my customer and say, okay, here's my lab. Try to reproduce the problem inside of here and give me exactly the error message or so, or what have you done. So that's a cool use case for something like this. Yes.
You can also do a safe state of that definition.
Right.
You can configure also everything, make a snapshot.
Right.
broken it and roll back.
Yeah.
It's the same story as before.
Yeah. I have it also inside of my DSC lab because I don't want to. I can show you that. It's using here. Here it is. It's called Checkpoint Lab VM. So you can create snapshots of your VMs. You can do that in any process. If you say, okay, I want to have Visual Studio Code on this, and then I want to have a snapshot, then you can take a snapshot and they can do whatever they want, and then you can revert the snapshot and everything is working. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Any other question? Yes.
It's considered to create labs.
So the question was, that's a very good question. The question was, it was designed for lab environments. Is it also suitable for productive environments? Raymond, correct me if I'm wrong, but some customer of Raymond is using it in production. I think you created commandlets to revert the less security that you have on the lab environments. So you can revert to the normal secure environment and do it in production. But test it first, please. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
Now Server 22 support.
Server 22 is supported. Server 25 is also supported. As VMs. Yes. So the lab VMs that I used, they are Server 2022. So to prove it, here, Server 2022. You just have to have the ISOs. So give AutomatedLab the ISOs. If AutomatedLab knows what to do with the ISOs, it will create base images, and then you can create differentiating disks out of this to create the VM. Another question. Okay, so I think we're right in time. Thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.